Hey guys, today I'm here with Kimberly Johnson. Kimberly is a longtime yoga instructor and body worker, and today Kim and I were talking about some of the most common mistakes that people make on downward facing dog. And so Kim and I are going to go over 3 of the most common mistakes that people make in downward facing dog and how to fix them.
Thanks, Maryann. Yeah, so the first most common mistake I see is that people feel like they really need to get their heels down to make the pose good. So people are just looking at the basic form without seeing what their spine is doing. So the point of downward facing dog, one of them, is to get a lot of movement and extension through the spine. If you have tighter hamstrings or tighter calves and you're forcing your heels to the ground, it's going to make your pelvis round, which is the opposite of what you want to do in downward facing dog.
So this is kind of how it would look, right? If you're trying to get your heels down.
So you're pretty flexible, so it's kind of easy for you to get your heels down, but step your feet back a little bit farther, and then for most people it's going to make their pelvis really tuck under, like a dog that has their tail between their legs. But you want to be a shameless dog, so you want to lift your heels up, come up onto your tiptoes, bend your knees a little bit, and then send your spine in towards your thighs so that the highest point of your pose is at your tailbone and your sitting bones rather than them getting tucked under. The next big mistake that I see is that people are so concerned with, I think that's just creating so much tension in their shoulders and their arms, and even their necks are hurting, to suspend themselves in the pose. So one thing that you can do for that is separate your arms a little bit wider. So a lot of people just have really strong arms and they're trying to force, they're bringing their hands exactly shoulder distance apart, because people say, oh, have your hands shoulder distance. But for most of us, we need the hands a little bit wider. You can even turn your hands out a little bit so that your arms can rotate out. Your biceps come forward and your triceps roll back. And I don't know if you want to do that facing the camera, Maryann, so that people can see how your arms are rotating a little bit more. So do it the wrong way. So the wrong way is like an O shape in the arms. So for some people it's hard for them to even straighten their arms and their neck gets a little crowded. And then the right way would be to turn your hands out a little bit. That will just help you roll your inner arms forward and your outer arms back. And you see how she just has some more nice space in her neck here that she couldn't get when her arms were turned in and a little bit automatically flexed. And what were we talking about was the last one?
The last one was, I think it was kind of a combination of the 2 that we just did, wasn't it? Or no, what was it? And this is okay because we can edit this. So it was the elbows bent. I think the second one you said when we were talking, I think you said elbows bent, and then I think the third one you said
It was wide in the arms, so I think I just kind of corrected 2 at the same time.
Too. So what would be a third thing that people do?
I think is like having too little space between your hands and your feet.
Too little or too much?
Too little or too much, yeah.
Yeah. So how would you get them at the right spacing?
Should I try?
Not right now, but thanks though. So I think turn the other way again. Yeah. So the third thing that I notice a lot with people is that in the distance between the hands and the feet, they either have too little space, where if your hands and your feet are too close, there's no way that you can lengthen your spine. But if your hands and your feet are too far away, it feels like you're on a slippery surface and you can't get any traction to feel a steadiness in the pose. So one way to tell what a good distance is if you come forward into plank pose, so you come with your shoulders over your wrist, you should be in a pretty decent plank and not have to adjust the distance between your hands and your feet too much. So now come back into downward dog, Maryann, and really remember that rolling your inner arms forward. And that's a good distance because you can see she can't put her heels easily down to the floor. Having your heels to the floor is only if your hamstrings are super open and you have genetically long Achilles tendons. Otherwise, it's going to be almost impossible to get your legs where you want them and your spine where you want them. So this is a really good distance. How does that feel for you, Maryann?
Feels good.
Yeah, so why don't you walk your feet closer and sort of show what it looks like when there's a short distance. Yeah, so like right now, there's not really a lot happening. There's not really anywhere for her to move. I could push her back a little bit, but it's like she looks like she's in a box that's too small. And then walk your feet back a lot. You know, and here it's just, there's not enough containment for her legs. So for me, it's a little harder to see because actually this looks on the better side than that short one. I'd say that most people are doing their downward dogs too short. But if she came forward into a plank pose right now, she'd have to walk her feet forward. So you just want to check out that distance for yourself to get the maximal benefit out of downward facing dog, which is an awesome pose. It's kind of a neutralizing pose because it works your upper body and your lower body. But if you're feeling too much work in your upper body, it's because you're not working your legs enough. And if you're feeling too much intensity in your legs, you're probably not getting that nice opening of your spine that happens when you're in a really well proportioned downward facing dog.
Great.